Since this is a standalone message, I thought that it would be great if we would look at what is known as the seventh sign of the kingdom. All the way through the Gospel of John, there are 7 signs of Jesus. And what a sign is, according to Jesus, it's not like a story that it couldn't have happened here on earth, only in heaven, but it's Jesus telling a story or being a presence that is focused here in earth, but points to a heavenly reality. So we have the various signs, beginning with the changing the water into wine, King of Galilee, I think we got him up here, and then healing the official's son in John 4, and then we get to John 5, where there's the healing of the paralytic, and there's 2 of them in John 6, and that is the feeding of the 5,000, and then Jesus walking on the water, and that leads to the 9th chapter, where Jesus heals a man who was born blind, and now we are at the 7th sign of the kingdom, where Jesus raises Lazarus from the dead. So the whole point of these signs is to point to a heavenly reality. Okay? So, 7th sign, John chapter 11. Now a certain man was ill, Lazarus from Bethany, the village of Martha and her sister Mary. Mary was the woman who anointed our Lord with perfume and wiped his feet with her hair. Her brother Lazarus was ill. So the sisters sent a message to Jesus, saying, "The one whom you love is ill." Now, when Jesus received the message, he said, "This illness does not lead to death. Rather, it's for the glory of God, so that the Son of God will be glorified through it." Accordingly, though he loved Lazarus and Martha and her sister, and he knew that Lazarus was ill, he stayed where he was 2 days longer. After this, he said to his disciples, "Let's go to Judea." The disciples responded, "Lord, Rabbi, just now they were trying to stone you, and you're going back there again?" Jesus said, "Are there not 12 hours of daylight? Those who walk in the day do not stumble because they have the light of this world. But those who walk in the darkness stumble because the light is not in them." Our friend Lazarus has fallen asleep, and we're going to awaken him. "But Lord," the disciples said, "if he's just asleep, he'll be all right." Jesus had been talking about his death, but the disciples thought he was referring to sleep. But then Jesus spoke plainly to them, and he said, "Lazarus is dead. And I'm glad for your sake that I wasn't there, so that you may know that I am the one that was sent." And then Jesus spoke plainly to them. "Lazarus is dead. And for your sake, I'm glad I wasn't there." And Thomas, who is also called the twin, said to his fellow disciples, "Let us go, that we may die with him there." When Jesus arrived, he found that Lazarus had already been in the tomb 4 days. Now Bethany was near Jerusalem, some 2 miles away, and Jews from Jerusalem had come out to be with Martha and Mary to console them. When Martha heard that Jesus was coming, she went out, leaving Mary at the home. When Martha came to Jesus, she said, "If you had been here, my brother would not have died. Yet I believe that God will give you whatever you ask of him." And Jesus said, "Martha, your brother will rise again." And she said, "I know that he will rise again in the resurrection on the last day. And Jesus said, Martha, I am the resurrection and the life. Those who believe in me will never die, and those who live will believe in me and never die. And then I think, parenthetically, Jesus must have looked at her in the eye and said, Martha, do you believe this? She said, I believe that you are the Messiah, the Son of God, the one coming into the world. And when she had said this, she went out and went to the home and found Mary and said, Mary, the teacher's here and he's asking for you. And Mary got up quickly and went out. Now Jesus had not yet come to the village, but was at the place where he found Martha. And so the Jews who were with Mary in the house saw her getting up quickly, assuming that she was going to the tomb to weep there, followed her to console her. When she came to Jesus, she knelt at his feet. And Mary said, Jesus, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. And when Jesus saw her weeping and the friends with her weeping, he was deeply moved in spirit. And he said, where have you laid him? And they said, come and see. Jesus began to weep. And some said, look how he loved him. And others said, could not this one who gave sight to the blind man kept this man from dying? Then Jesus, again greatly disturbed, came to the tomb. It was a cave with a large stone in front of it. And Jesus said, roll away the stone. Martha, the sister of the dead man, said, Lord, there's a stench. Already he's been dead 4 days. But they rolled away the stone. Jesus said to her, did I not tell you, Martha, that if you believed, you would see the glory of God? Then Jesus looked upward and said, Father, I thank you for hearing me. I know that you always hear me, but I say this for the crowd gathered here, that they may believe that you have sent me. When he had said this, he cried out in a loud voice, Lazarus, come out! And the dead man came out. His hands and his feet were wrapped in cloths, and a cloth was wrapped around his face. And Jesus said, unbind him and let him go. And this is the word of God for all of us, the people of God. Thanks be to God. This is from John's Gospel, the 14th to the 11th chapter, the first 44 verses. Let's look at this story and unpack it in a minute. There are 6 movements that I see in it. The first movement is when Lazarus is critically ill, hasn't died yet. There are no health care facilities, and so the sisters do the only thing that they know to do. They send word to Jesus that the one that you love, in other words, your good buddy, your good friend, is at the point of death. And so that's the first movement, number 1 back there. Joe, if we can find that, is the sisters send word. You know, over the years, I've seen that always, when I pray, I have a sense that God is present, but not always do I get a response. I mean, I know that God invites me to bring my closest concerns to God, to the throne of grace, as some call it. Sometimes I just don't get a response. I'm an old guy, and I've walked with the Lord for a long time. And here's something I've learned. That sometimes, always, when I pray, God is hearing and responding, just not according to my time, or answering in the exact way that I think that God should. And for the last 25 years, I've been keeping and hearing a daily journal. And I can go back and read that, and read what I was praying about, and say, oh man, if God would have answered that prayer like that, this would not, with this over here would never have happened, you see? So it's like God always responds, but sometimes in God's own timing, and sometimes it opens up a whole new vista of things that would never have occurred to me back here. So when the sister sent word, Jesus, come quick, he had something bigger in the works. The second thing that we see in verse 25, Jesus is standing with one of his closest friends, Martha. He used to go to their home and refresh himself, and it was kind of like a time-out place for Jesus. And they were those kinds of friends. But now here Martha is wiped out. She is disconsolate. Her heart is broken. Her brother now is dead. And Jesus says, Martha, I'm the one that specializes in dead-end situations. I am the God of the hopeless. I am the God who makes things right. Someone said Jesus is the God of the used, abused, and utterly screwed up of this world. How many are part of that crowd? Used, abused, and utterly screwed up. In Ephesians, the Apostle Paul was to write about the unmeasurable, no, it's not on, it's in, the immeasurable greatness of his power. And he talks about resurrection power. You simply can't measure it. And this is the one where Jesus says, Martha, do you believe this? Now, he wasn't asking, do you cognitively understand what I'm just saying about who I am? No, it's a deeper belief than that. That kind of cognitive belief is, I believe that Abraham Lincoln was the 16th president of the United States. Okay, cool, that's great. History, nice. It really doesn't impact me now. He was talking about believe in terms of giving yourself over to. Do you believe that, really? And it takes that kind of belief to begin to see some things happen. Several years ago, I think it was 10 years ago, I was appointed to go to Apex United Methodist Church, great church. And while I was there, a couple of years after I was there, a young woman started visiting our church. And she had muscular dystrophy, and she had thick, heavy braces, and often crutches. She couldn't drive. But she had this brilliant smile, and she was very intelligent. She got her degree from ECU. I guess you could. I don't know. I'm not going to go there. And she was a special ed teacher. Amazing that she could do that at Holly Springs Elementary School. But as I got to know her, she had a dream. And when she was 14, her parents, who had a lot of foresight, wonderful people, saw that she got dance lessons. Imagine that. And so she saw herself as a dancer, even though she had these big braces, all that, and her walk was like that. And she said, and I want to dance in church. Okay. But we had a liturgical dance group in that church. Have you ever seen? I think maybe you've had it here. It's girls they're usually girls. Sorry, guys can do it too. But who are trained with ballet or something like that, and they do interpretive movement to Christian music. It can be beautiful. And so we had that group. And so she said she would like to do that. And I'll never forget the Sunday that Jennifer Piggler stood on the church platform and came up with a chair and laid her crutches down, still having her. And I think it was like a Molly soloist started to sing. And Jennifer began to interpret the music. And I'm going to tell you, there was not a dry eye in that auditorium that morning. And then she said to me later, really what my dream is, I'd love to combine some of my life experience as a handicapped person, or a person living with handicaps, and dance, and have some kind of application of children that have special need. Okay, that sounds good. Now, she was living alone, single. She really kind of was living right on the edge of the resources, and so that just was like a dream deferred. Well, another year or so goes by. Irene and I are in a Bible study. There's about 12 of us in there. We meet weekly. We have a great time. And couples and singles. And there's a single guy in it who has muscular dystrophy. He could drive. He's got an infectious smile, bright mind. Time goes by and somebody says, hey, what do you think about Shane Jennifer? You know how churches do this kind of thing. What happened? A year later, I'm standing there doing the wedding vows of Shane. And okay, a cool thing about this is that Shane had resources. Lots of resources. And then I moved and kind of lost touch a little bit, although I had come back to do the wedding. And this week on Facebook, here comes Jennifer's picture. And do we have, I think, yeah, okay. There's Jennifer. Now she's with her service dog, Bridget. And she is receiving from the Brownlee Chamber of Commerce, I believe it is, the award this year for community access because of her school. I think we got a couple other pictures of Jennifer. Yeah, there she is right now. And one more, maybe. Yeah, okay. There's a Triangle Access Award for her school, Creativity in Motion. And you can get on the website if you want to. She's had the school for 4 years from now. It's Creativity in Motion, educate the mind, move the body, and connect the spirit. And it is the most beautiful story of resurrection believing. She had to believe, and then she had to step into it, and God gave her the resources, the husband, the wherewithal, and now this wonderful story is meeting the needs of a lot of kids across the Triangle in central North Carolina. Praise God for that. We're talking about the kind of belief that turns into action. Now, in the third point, going back to the sixth, Jesus was greatly disturbed in spirit, moved deeply. What that says to me is that our God is not an impersonal judge. He is not one sternly sitting back and watching these human beings trying to figure it out. He is one who is invested. He's the one who is involved in our lives to the point where Jesus, God in flesh, wept over the heartbreaking loss that Mary and Martha, his good friends, experienced when Lazarus died. God is a God who hurts with our hurts, who feels with our feelings. And then fourth, the 39th verse, but he expects us to partner with him in his resurrecting work. And that's where he said, roll away the stone. Take any situation that requires a resurrection from Jesus, and you know that I don't do the resurrecting, Jesus does, but he wants to partner with us always. You have to take action, especially in the face of what appears to be apparently impossible. Another story from my past, I got a long past. This is when I was at Fuquay Arena, United Methodist Church. And you all know the Fuquay Arena is French for Winston-Salem, right? I was there for 10 years. After I was there for a couple of years, we said, let's try to see what's in our community, really. And so we did some community development. We had some people down from the General Board of Global Ministries in New York come down and help us to do this. And we established what we call a shalom zone. Shalom is a biblical word for peace, but also for fullness of life, wholeness of being. So we said, let's make a shalom zone around the church. Like a 2-mile radius. Okay, let's look inside there. God is saying, you guys are responsible for what goes on in here. So we did a list of what are the greatest underserved needs. There are a bunch of needs in our Shalom Zone, but the one that seemed to surface as the number one was middle school kids after school. That was when all manner of hell broke loose for a lot of kids who were unsupervised between the time school lets out and mom and dad or dad or whomever gets home. Okay? So, we had just relocated the whole church, built a brand new campus in Fuquay-Varina on Juddy Cabin. Incurred some debt. But we're praying about this. Okay, God, if you want us to do it. God, and all the signals were the needs there. My people care about the need. And at that very time, a building immediately adjacent to Fuquay-Varina Middle School came up for sale. That building was next to the school, and on the other side of it was Fallon Park, community, beautiful little park. It could not have been, he teed it up for us perfectly. But what did we have to do? We just moved into this new building with a whole lot of debt. And we're going to buy something else? I think that's Resurrection Living says, yep, that's exactly what we're going to do. Stepped into it, bought the building, partnered with 4-H, which is way cool. I think churches ought to partner more with. And they sent us some of the curriculum, the team. We had courses. Then we brought our members coming in volunteering as mentors with the kids. Upshot of it, 2 years later, the governor came down and presented us the Governor's Award for Community Excellence. Isn't that cool? But you know what? If we had said as a church, we need to vote about this, we don't know about cash flow, you know what I mean? I think we would not have done it. Sometimes the church has got to take a risk. When you believe it's the right thing, something God cares about, and step out and do it. That's rolling the stone. Okay? Another thing we did in Community Zone, there were a lot of Latinos coming in. There were ministries, but what we noticed is that there were a lot of the Mexican mothers who didn't know English were just getting passed by. Their husbands had jobs, but they were at home with the school. So we partnered with Wake Tech Community College, and we hosted English as a second language for these mostly Mexican women. And they had kids, so we started a child development center for Latino children. Now, all this stuff, I think, took a lot of faith. But it's the kind of thing that I believe churches ought to do. Leads to the next thing. Number 5, Jesus saying, didn't I tell you that you'd see the glory of God? I think a lot of times we Christians don't see the glory of God because we don't risk enough. We don't step out to do the right thing and really trust Him. When we do, I believe, that unlocks the power of God. And that a friend of mine is Mike Slaughter. He's got a church in Ohio. He has 2 really bright kids, and now one's a surgeon, one's doing something else great. But they're both, and their families are invested in the church. And he said, why haven't my kids left the church like so many others have? He said, because my church has always been a risk church. And my kids grew up seeing that this church makes a difference in people's lives. It was out on the community grapevine that Ginghamsburg United Methodist Church is doing as much as social services in the whole county for poor people. Plus, they're telling folks about Jesus. He said, why would my kids leave this? It's the best thing going. I think that's the best way to retain our kids, is for the church to be surging forward, taking risks for the gospel. When we do that, we see the glory of God. Last one. Jesus standing in front of a now resurrected Lazarus, who looks like Land of the Living Dead mummy, or whatever that is, And what he says to everybody gathered around there. He said, he's alive. But you got to clean them up. You know, unbind him. Get off this stinking, rotting grave clothes and set him free. You know, that the kind of ministry that Jesus wants us to be involved with is going to at least require that we get our hands dirty. Or maybe that we might smudge our reputation. You know, or be accused of hanging out with the wrong kind of people. It means that we are going to be so concerned about people maybe who are living with addictions, or helping folks whose marriages are messed up, or parents that are despairing, or people who've lost their way. You know, when we talk about Jesus came, his mission was to seek and to save those who are lost. He didn't mean, lost didn't mean irreligious people. It means people who were lost to God's best. People just couldn't find their way. Jesus does the resurrecting and the saving, but he does call us to roll away stones and to rip off the evidences of decay. You know, church, it's got to be more like a football team than a golf match. You know, a golf match is just you and your scorecard. A football team, there's the offense, defense, special teams, and probably other position players. I think, what is it, 46 players on a pro team? Is that about it? Yeah, about that. Well, they all have different performance indicators, but they all, 46 maybe performance indicators for each person, but they all have one goal. What's the goal? Get the ball into the end zone. Okay, church. Bunches of us here. We all have different things to do. What's the goal? Jesus said it. I came seeking to save those who are lost. Doesn't mean those who are not Methodists. Those who can't say some creed like we say it. It's people who are lost to God's best for them. The church, I think, should be measured not by its seating capacity, but by its sending capacity. We should be the church, not go to church. So, leave you with this. When somebody asks you out in the community, hey, how's Harbor Church doing? You can answer them like this. Hey, we're doing great. Since our new guy's here, we've been over 500 every Sunday. Or we could say, hey, are you kidding? We're doing great. Have you seen our new building? Which is true. It's fabulous. Or you could say, Candy, John, this is right, isn't it? All our bills are paid. We're doing great. Or you could say, we have got this terrific young pastor with a beautiful wife. That's all true. You know, I think the better answer when somebody says, hey, how's Harbor Church doing? Best answer is, we're rolling and ripping. Okay? So I want you to do that. Out in the community this week. Say, our church is rolling and ripping. And if you were going to say, they're what? And that gives you an opportunity to say, these are things that we care about. And we are partnering with Jesus, and he is resurrecting dead stuff, bringing them to life. Let's pray. Oh God, we thank you that we serve a God that is not philosophical concept or an item in history, but we believe, as we understand, that we serve one who is with us, who is leading the way, who is the captain of our souls, who is expecting us to follow along as he engages life with his life. As he steps into the darkness and brings light. As he hangs out with those who are among the dead, bringing them into the fullness of being. Lord, help us to be a Shalom Zone church. Help us, oh God, to take the risks, to trust you, to come to the glory. In your name we pray.